standards from scientists such as Professor Kawata. We make our way to St. Louis, in the US state of Missouri. This is where Monsanto's headquarters are located. Monsanto is the world's largest producer of genetically modified seed. Again, we request an interview, but again, even at the company's headquarters, our request is turned down. Insiders have long been telling us to continue our search in Washington. That's where the center of the debate is located. Some internet research tells us what they mean. Time and again, a connection between Monsanto and the United States Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, is brought up. Influential politicians are named. Many allegedly worked for Monsanto in the past. The company is said to have a lot of political influence. Washington, D.C. How long is Monsanto's reach? Is it really true that the genetic engineering and chemicals giant could manage to get past the American authorities with possibly inadequate tests? Maybe even with a little bit of help from American politicians. We're waiting for an interview. After several rejections, Dennis Kucinich finally agreed to talk to us. As a Democrat from Ohio, he's a member of the House of Representatives. He has some harsh words when it comes to the Food and Drug Administration.
The FDA has not done its job to protect the American people. But we can see that it's incapable of doing so because of Monsanto's deep ties to the administration.
Is there an inappropriate relationship between US authorities and the genetic engineering industry? Political statements like that have to be taken with a pinch of salt, especially here in Washington. We find an expert. He came by explosive material through petitioning the authorities. He wants to explain to us that the FDA management ignored all warnings and how they did it. Andrew Kimbrell from the Center of Food Safety and Applied Nutrition.
What's remarkable about this is that these are the scientists working inside FDA, and when the political appointees at the top of the agency said no testing, no labeling, they say in these documents, where is your science? Why didn't you listen to our science? So now that means that these foods have gone out without the testing, without saying, hey, listen, are these foods toxic? Are these foods causing new allergens? They're out there, they're in the fields, they're in our supermarkets, they're now going around the world without this testing being done, even though FDA's own scientists said these tests should have been done. They had to have been done if these foods were to be proved safe. Section of the FDA. This is really amazing. Here they say genetically modified plants can contain unexpected high concentrations of plant toxicants. In other words, the genetic engineering of these plants can take a safe food and make it toxic. Not only that, but on food allergens, they say that there can be novel allergens, that this genetic engineering of plants can create new allergens never seen before in our food. And that's, again, from the toxicology section of the FDA, their own scientists. This food is not safe. It needs to be looked at. But Monsanto didn't want that examination to happen. So it used its political influence to make sure that the FDA could not do its job. And so to this day, both the United States and people of the world do not know if these foods are safe because Monsanto was able to convince these political appointees not to do their job.
This is another issue we would have liked to confront Monsanto about, but they're standing by their decision. No interview. And what about the FDA? A court ruled that the authorities' work was clean and independent. But for Andrew Kimbrell, there is a small clique of politicians, agency managers, and Monsanto. To prove it, he shows us this diagram.
Look at this. Look at all these former Monsanto employees. Look at all the various government agencies that they have invaded. This is nothing less than a corporate coup d'etat. This is a corporate takeover of our government agencies by Monsanto. Look at this. This is John Ashcroft, formerly Attorney General and the current president. He had got more money from Monsanto, 5 times more money than any of the other hundreds of members of Congress that they found. He then got this man appointed to the Supreme Court. This is Clarence Thomas, a former lawyer from Monsanto, who recently authored, he was the author of an opinion that said, yes, Monsanto and DuPont, you can patent plants.
The upshot of our US research is we have a lot of unanswered questions. Were there really these influences? Is it maybe a particularly American problem? And how does the situation in Europe compare? Brussels, seat of many institutions of the European Union. This is where the EU Commission made a very important decision in the early 1990s. Before there is complete clarity about the potential dangers of genetically modified food, it would not be allowed on the plates of consumers. The European Union issued an import ban on all genetically engineered products. The skeptics could breathe again, but hardly anyone reckoned with the irrepressible business will of the biotech industry. It's reported that Monsanto employees regularly fly into Brussels to lobby politicians on genetic engineering. And simultaneously, the US government is exerting pressure on Europe. The World Trade Organization, the WTO, ruled against the EU on its decision to ban the import of GM food. For insiders, it was a cardinal mistake to bow to the pressure of the United States, even though the safety of GM products was not certain. And, like in the United States, there are also doubts about the independence of the European Food Safety Authority. In April 2005, this was broadcast on German television.
The European Food Authority is located in Brussels. They evaluate the safety of genetic engineering. The European Food Safety Authority should be independent and objective. But doubts are in order, because environmental organizations are accusing scientists of having too close ties to the industry, a serious allegation. Joachim Schiemann, a German on the panel that is supposedly independent, but privately he is a member of an association for the promotion of genetic engineering. And what about Sweet from Britain and his Spanish colleague Puig Dominic? In their capacity of genetic engineering watchdogs, they have to provide information about possible conflicts of interest, and there are plenty of those. Sweet, for example, is a member of the British lobby that champions genetic engineering. He explains that indirect payments or other forms are taking place or have in the past.
Hamburg, Germany's largest port. For over 10 years, GM soy has been discharged here. Every 2 weeks, 60,000 tons of it arrives from Argentina and Brazil. It is mixed in during further processing and thus secretly makes its way into bread, ice cream, chocolate and other sweets. The HIP company, located in Pfaffenhofen in southern Germany, produces baby food. Nobody here wants to have genetically modified products. GM-free is company policy. What we want to know from those manning the consumer hotline is, what is the atmosphere like amongst their customers? How do they feel about the issue of genetic engineering?
A child should be fed with the healthiest, most basic and most natural raw materials possible. We don't use soy because soy can be genetically modified, and we can't exclude the possibility when we buy GM-free soy products, and so we don't use soy.
A food that was considered particularly healthy for a long time under general suspicion? What will be genetically